there is a version of you that doesn't flinch, that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't break at 2 a.m. over someone, who never lost a minute of sleep over you. That version exists. It has always existed. But something or someone buried it, and today we dig it back up. Not because coldness is a virtue, but because in a world that will smile at your face and drain your life force without blinking, warmth without armor isn't kindness. It's prey behavior. Stay with me. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Think about the strongest man you know. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive. The strongest. The one who walks into a room and something in the air changes. The one who never seems rattled, who never chases, who never needs. Now ask yourself, was he always like that? Almost never. Because here's what nobody tells you about strength, real psychological strength. The kind that makes you untouchable is never handed to you. It is forged. And the forging process? It's brutal. It involves loss, betrayal, silence, grief swallowed whole, nights where you had to make a decision, collapse or calcify. The coldness you see in powerful men isn't a personality trait. It's scar tissue, functional, purposeful, earned. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the known world, wrote in his private journals. Journals never meant to be published. Words that read like a man talking himself off a ledge every single morning. He wasn't born unshakable. He practiced being unshakable every single day. And today, we're going to dissect exactly how a man transforms. Not through motivation, not through affirmations, through a series of brutal psychological reversals. 6 of them. Each one will disturb you a little. Each one should, because the truth about becoming strong is not comfortable. It never was. Reversal 1, stop being easy to read. The first thing a man must learn is how to become opaque. Here's what I mean. Most men are open books, and they believe this is a virtue. Honesty, transparency, wearing your heart on your sleeve. Society celebrates this. Therapists encourage it. Movies romanticize it. But watch what actually happens in the real world. The moment people know exactly what you want, they control you. The moment they know exactly what hurts you, they own you. The moment they can predict your every reaction, you are no longer a man. You are a mechanism. In 1513, Niccolo Machiavelli sat in exile, stripped of his position, tortured, humiliated, and he wrote The Prince. And in that text, buried beneath a political theory, is one of the coldest psychological observations in human history. He wrote that a ruler who reveals his true nature is at the mercy of those who observe him. In modern terms, vulnerability, displayed carelessly, is not strength. It is intelligence leaking out of you in real time. Now, I want to be precise here because this is misunderstood constantly. Becoming opaque does not mean becoming dishonest. It means becoming deliberate. It means learning the difference between what you feel and what you broadcast. There was a psychological study conducted at UCLA. Researchers observed negotiation behavior between 2 groups. One group was trained to express every emotional reaction as they occurred. The other group was trained to delay their emotional display by just 8 seconds. The second group won their negotiations at nearly twice the rate, 8 seconds. That's how thin the line is between being controlled and being in control. The cold man doesn't suppress his emotions. He schedules them. He feels everything. He shows strategically. And to the world, he becomes impossible to manipulate, impossible to predict, impossible to pressure. Because you cannot squeeze a man who gives you nothing to grip. Reversal 2. Let it destroy you. Then let it finish. Now we go somewhere most self-help channels will never take you. Because everyone wants to talk about healing. Nobody wants to talk about what comes before healing, which is complete and total destruction. Here is the truth that will age in your mind for years after you hear it. The men who never break fully, never heal fully, they patch, they cope, they manage. They build their next relationship on the rubble of the last one. Never having cleared the ground properly, they go to the gym to outrun grief instead of sitting still and letting it finish its work. And grief always finishes its work. The only question is, on your timeline or on its own? Jung called it the process of individuation, the painful confrontation with your shadow, the parts of yourself you've exiled, suppressed, refused to look at, he believed, and years of psychology have since supported this. That a man who does not descend into his own darkness is perpetually haunted by it. Think about it. You know men like this. Men in their 40s still emotionally governed by something that happened at 17. Still reacting, not responding. Still bleeding from a wound they've spent 2 decades refusing to dress properly. The strongest men I've ever studied. From Stoic philosophers to modern special operations soldiers, from historical conquerors to quiet men who've buried children and kept walking. They all share one trait. They went all the way down. They didn't distract. They didn't numb immediately. They sat in the fire until the fire ran out of fuel. Octavian, later known as Augustus Caesar, watched his father figure Julius Caesar get assassinated when he was 18 years old. Watched the world collapse. Watched men he trusted choose sides against him. And instead of fleeing his grief or rage, he became dangerously quiet. He sat with it. He strategized from it. He became the most powerful man in the history of the Western world. Not despite his pain, because he processed it completely and then turned it into architecture. So here is reversal 2. Stop running from the breaking. Run toward it. Let it complete. Because on the other side of a man who has fully broken and fully rebuilt is someone the world simply cannot threaten anymore. What do you threaten a man with when he's already been to the bottom and chosen to come back? Reversal 3. Cut the roots of your hunger. Here is where we talk about something that will make you uncomfortable. Need. Specifically, your need for validation, for approval, for someone else to confirm that you are enough, that you are loved, that you matter. This need is the single greatest vulnerability a man carries, and almost every man carries it. It doesn't matter how successful you are, doesn't matter how confident you appear. That hunger for a parent's approval that never came, for a woman's adoration that keeps getting withdrawn right when you reach for it, for a group of peers to finally recognize what you've built. That hunger is a leash, and someone somewhere is holding the other end of it. B.F. Skinner ran an experiment in the 1940s that changed how we understand behavior. He put pigeons in boxes and rewarded them with food pellets, sometimes consistently, sometimes randomly. And what he found was disturbing. Random, unpredictable reward created the most addictive behavior patterns of all. Pigeons rewarded randomly would peck at their lever almost obsessively, far more than those who received consistent reward. Now replace the pigeon with a man. Replace the food pellet with attention, with praise, with affection given and withdrawn on no predictable schedule. Sound familiar? This is the psychological mechanism behind why men chase unavailable women, why they work 80 hours a week for a father who will never say, "I'm proud of you," why they keep refreshing for comments on a post, waiting for someone to tell them the thing they need to hear. The cold man understands this about himself. Not with shame, with clarity. He identifies the hunger. He traces it to its root. And then, methodically, patiently, he cuts it. Not by becoming an island. Not by pretending he doesn't care about anything. But by doing the most radical thing a man in this attention economy can do. He becomes his own validator. He builds an internal reference point so stable, so anchored, that outside approval becomes pleasant when it arrives, and irrelevant when it doesn't. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor who unified Germany through sheer political cold-bloodedness, once said something that sounds almost casual until you think about it for 3 days straight. He said, "The great questions of the time are not decided by speeches and majority decisions, but by iron and blood." He wasn't just talking about politics. He was describing an internal architecture. A man who needs the crowd to approve his direction will always move in the crowd's direction. A man who has cut that need, he moves, and the crowd wonders where he's going. Reversal 4. Master the calculus of silence. There is a weapon so powerful that most men have completely forgotten it exists, because in the modern world, a world of hot takes and instant replies, and the addictive compulsion to respond, this weapon has been all but abandoned. Silence. Not the silence of a man with nothing to say. The silence of a man with so much to say that he has chosen not to. There is a difference, and people feel that difference in their bones. History's most consequential figures understood this with almost surgical precision. Abraham Lincoln, before he was an icon, when he was just a lawyer in Illinois, with an unbearable amount of political pressure bearing down on him, kept a drawer in his desk that his staff called the hot letters drawer, Whenever Lincoln felt the consuming urge to fire off a furious letter, to a general who had failed him, to a political enemy who had publicly humiliated him, he would write the letter completely, every word of rage and frustration. Then he would fold it, place it in the drawer, and never send it. He called them letters I never sent. Most of them were found after his death. Some of the most eloquent, devastating pieces of prose in American political history. Never sent, because Lincoln understood something most men learn too late. The response that feels most satisfying in the moment is almost never the response that serves you most in the long run. Now scale this down to your daily life. The argument you absolutely had to win. What did winning it cost you? The explanation you had to give someone who had already made up their mind. How much of your energy went into that conversation and returned to you as nothing? The man who cannot be provoked into responding cannot be controlled, because the entire architecture of psychological manipulation, from schoolyard bullying to corporate politics to intimate relationship warfare, depends on one thing: getting you to react. The moment you react, you've handed over control. You've confirmed the button exists. You've shown exactly where to press next time. The cold man studies his own trigger points, the way a general studies his own weaknesses before the enemy finds them. He eliminates them one by one, or he learns to receive pressure and breathe. Let me say this carefully, because it's precise. Silence is not passivity. Silence is gravitational. When a man who speaks rarely finally speaks, people lean in. When a man who responds to everything refuses to respond, people spiral. You want power in any relationship, professional, personal, social. Become the one who can always afford to say nothing. Reversal 5. Build something that doesn't need witnesses. Here is perhaps the most quietly devastating insight of everything we've discussed today. The modern world is performing, and you, without realizing it, may have built your entire identity as a performance. Think about what you do every day. Not just what you post, what you do, where you go, what you choose to invest your time in. How much of it is genuinely yours? How much of it is designed to be seen? There was a philosopher named Seneca, advisor to emperors, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, and privately, one of its most tortured thinkers, who wrote this in a letter around 65 AD. Retire into yourself as much as you can. He wasn't advocating for isolation. He was diagnosing a sickness that he saw spreading through Roman society, and one that has absolutely metastasized into ours. The sickness of needing an audience to feel real. The cold man, the strong man, builds in private. He has a project no one knows about, a discipline practiced before anyone is awake. A standard he holds himself to when no camera is rolling, no approval is coming, no one is watching. Because here's what this private construction does psychologically. It creates a self that exists independent of all external circumstances. Most men don't have this. Most men's identity is a composite of other people's opinions of them. Take away the job title. Who are they? Take away the relationship. Who are they? Take away the income, the followers, the social circle. What remains? For a man with no private foundation, the answer is terrifying. For a man who has built something that doesn't need witnesses, the answer is himself. Unchanged Benjamin Franklin, polymath, diplomat, founding father, and one of history's most effective strategic minds, kept a private ledger for most of his adult life. In it, he tracked 13 virtues: honesty, industry, silence, order, resolution. Every single week, he would grade himself. Not for anyone else's review, not for publication, for himself. His private self-accountability was so rigorous that he continued it for decades. And what it built was a man whose public confidence was genuine, because it was backed by a private architecture that no external event could simply knock over. This is what most men are missing. Not motivation, not information. A private self that they respect. Build that. In silence, in discipline, in patience. And when the world eventually sees it, they will not be looking at a performance. They will be looking at something real. And there is nothing more commanding than that. Reversal 6. Learn to love indifferently now. The final reversal. And this one is for the men. Sitting with someone they love in the back of their mind right now. Someone who has taken more than they've given. Someone who mistakes your patience for weakness, your loyalty for guaranteed return. Here's the cold truth. You can love someone and not need them. In fact, until you can do that, you don't actually love them. You're addicted to them. There's a difference. Addiction looks like love. It has all the same feelings. The obsession, the warmth, the fear of loss. But addiction is fundamentally about you, about filling something hollow inside yourself with another person. Love, real love, the kind that actually serves the other person, requires that you be whole first. The Japanese have a concept called mushin, a state cultivated in martial arts, meaning no mind, a state of such internal stillness and completeness that no external strike can fully unbalance you. The master swordsman is not someone who feels no threat. He is someone for whom threat has no grip. This is what loving indifferently means. Not loving less. Loving freely. Caring deeply about someone while simultaneously holding no hostage situation inside yourself. No desperate need for them to love you back in a specific way, on a specific timeline, to a specific degree, because the moment your peace depends on another person's behavior, you have made that person your jailer. And you've done it voluntarily. The cold man loves. He loves fully. But his love is not a transaction, not a debt he is owed, not a leash. He gives, without keeping score, without expectation of return. And if it is not reciprocated, he moves, cleanly, without theater, without the extended suffering that comes from a man who has outsourced his happiness to someone who was never equipped to hold it. This is not cruelty. This is the highest form of self-respect. Closing monologue. Let me leave you with something to sit with tonight. Everything we've discussed, the opacity, the willingness to fully break, the severing of hollow hungers, the mastery of silence, the private construction of self, the indifferent love, none of it is about becoming less. It's about becoming more real, more stable, more yours. The world will tell you that the sensitive man is the evolved man, that the man who needs nothing is broken, that walls are damage, that coldness is pathology. And perhaps, for some men, some walls, some coldness, that's true. But for the man who has been made soft by years of accommodating people who never reciprocated, for the man who has given and watched it treated as expected rather than extraordinary, for the man who has been so available that he has become invisible, the work isn't more openness. The work is the forging. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in the last years of his reign, something that should be carved into stone somewhere visible. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, not happiness. Strength. There is a version of you that has been through everything you've been through and come out the other side, not bitter, not closed, but precise. Cold in the way a surgeon is cold. Not because he doesn't care, but because caring without discipline kills the patient. That man is not a destination. He is a practice, daily, private, unglamorous. And here is the question I want to leave in the back of your mind. Not to answer tonight, but to carry. Have the people in your life made you softer, or have they made you less? Because there's a difference. Soft is alive. Soft is warm. Soft is chosen. Less is what happens when you've been slowly drained by people and situations that you told yourself you could afford to tolerate. You cannot afford to tolerate them. Not anymore. The forging begins now, or it began the moment you started watching. Either way, welcome back.